This video begins the discussion of SQL Server Analysis Services and specifically what it does for us in relationship to data warehouses. And we're going to start out and talk about an initial overview, and then we'll cover SQL Server Analysis Services in some depth. The overview actually will look initially at where we've been. Actually, we've already had 7 videos, and we'll summarize those for you so you don't lose sort of sight of where we've been. And then we'll take a look at cubes in general in terms of what they are conceptually, because when you implement SQL Server Analysis Services, you're going to be creating these cubes, and we'll discuss why they're a very, very useful product of a data warehouse and what they can do for us. So let's take a brief look at where we've been. We started out in the first video just as a basic introduction, and we covered databases. We looked at the overview of how the iLab was going to work, how we're going to think about relational databases. We said it was a collection, remember, of tables and relationships among those tables. You could consider it at a broad level to be those things. We looked at the characteristics of a relational database in terms of what it was good for, discussed the fact that it was great at generating information based on transactional processing kinds of activities, but as it got bigger and bigger, it would start running into problems if you tried to use it for analytical purposes. It would take too long, and it would also sometimes impact the performance of the transaction processing collection itself. So we discussed the idea of doing a data warehouse framework that would in essence take snapshots from the database and build something that we could actually use for our analysis purposes. And what we did is we built a little roadmap, and let's take a look at this roadmap and where it's sort of taking us, and bring it up on the screen. And you can see from here what we talked about initially is we have a series of data sources. Typically these are our relational databases. In some cases there'll be other external databases as well, and we take these collectively and we go through an extraction, transformation, and a linking process where we transform these databases, we integrate their definitions, and then we load them into an enterprise data warehouse. And we talked a little bit about using a data marts and the pros and cons of data marts, building individual data marts versus bringing up an entire enterprise data warehouse. And we said that there are applications that you can generate using either data marts or the enterprise data warehouse directly. And one of them was that we were going to be looking at is this OLAP and application, and we're going to use SQL Server Analysis Services for that. So we looked at internally. We looked at the AdventureWorks as a relational database, and we examined some aspects of SQL Server, the integration services, and how they were used to take information out of AdventureWorks and put them into data warehouses. We actually built ourselves a little small data mart as well, and use SSIS tools and also the BIDS, the Business Intelligence Development Studio system to take information out of various databases and put them in our particular data mart. So we've been seen a good deal here. We've dived down at a particular, a fairly detailed level. Looking at we had the extraction and transform and load process. We actually had, as we said earlier, we dived down and looked inside a relational database itself that was AdventureWorks, and we used SQL Server Management Studio to do that. And we looked at what happens after you do an ETL. We looked at the AdventureWorks DW, and we looked at the fact it was a collection of tables that started with the word dim in fact, and that they were related together in a star schema. And we took a specific example. We looked at a specific example of where a given fact table will have a number of dim tables around it to describe it there. And we looked at how you go about building that. And we discussed how we identify dims and facts, discussed that. We talked a little bit about granularity and the fact that you want to make sure your granularity in terms of the level of detail you're collecting is at the right level, and what the problems are if you don't do any of that. Consider some of the steps to a data warehouse. We created a dimension table in our data warehouse. We created the fact tables. We linked each fact table with the appropriate dimension table, and we populated the resulting schema that we had. So we did that. Then we dove down into SQL Server integration services, and we looked at we actually created a dimension table called currency using a SQL script, and we used the Business Intelligence Development Studio to load data into our currency table. As an example of what's available in terms of tools there, we created a star schema. We used the SQL import and export wizard to copy a table and its structure and data into our warehouse. And for each table, we defined a primary key internally to our particular data warehouse, and we specified the relationship. So we actually built a star schema inside that. So we've been down a number of things, and if we go back to the roadmap again, we started out at using relational databases and went through a series of steps, and now we have a data mart sitting out there, or it could be an enterprise data warehouse, and we have dimension tables and we have fact tables sitting there. Now we're ready to talk about using SQL Server analysis services and how it works in terms of creating something called cubes. So let's take a look at what cubes are next.